None but love. Alright, what is going on here? I am often wondering... Alright, this is about Goodwill. It's a little expose about Goodwill. I'm doing a cold reading here. And I just now came to Goodwill. Just came to Goodwill with my business partner and friend Sarah, and she started telling me some stuff about Goodwill and that her mom had passed on to her. So I looked it up, and it's sometimes you would just never think, right? Things like this sometimes, but that's you find stuff like that. So let's see, where did thought I had more things in my clipboard here. That's interesting. All right, there we go. Putting this on Facebook just to share with some, here we go. All right. So that's up there. And now I'm just wondering why my audio I'm not hearing it. Hearing that? Huh. Well, maybe then that means that I should just... Let's see. Well, this mute button on here doesn't seem to be... Hint, plug in headphones. I don't know. Well, let me take a moment and gear up and see what's happening here. Which then is going to make me want to gear up with another, let's see, another bag, another pack. Let me get because it doesn't seem to be working. I probably sound distant right now because it doesn't seem to be working with the Bluetooth. For some reason, the Android phones with things like this, with some of these apps, podcasting, I've done some social podcasting with call-in and social audio on Wisdom. And unless you're using an iPhone, some of these, the microphone, like the headset I'm wearing from JLab, it just doesn't pair up. There might be some other software I need to get, but we'll see. All right, so I'm turning off the headset. And while that happens, I wonder if any difference will be made. So that went off, and now I don't see any difference in the response in the decibel meter here. So, but my voice, since it's coming straight into the microphone of the mobile device, I know these Samsung devices have really great audio, the microphones. So now let me plug this in, and we'll see what happens. Alright, so I'm here. Alright, so the mic seems to be working now. My voice probably has changed a lot, but let's take a look at now what this article is called. It's called The Dark Reality Behind America's Greatest Thrift Store Empire. How a Saturday Night Internet Wormhole Effectively Ruined My Favorite Store. It's by Alice Minium. It was published on April 22nd, 2018. And there's an image that I also used here on Spreaker. And the image is credited to Henry J. Cordis. All right, continuing with this article by Alice Minium. There's a quote here. "We are trapped. Everybody who works at Goodwill is trapped." Harold Ligland, $5.46 an hour. Goodwill has long been my favorite store. As someone who detests the practices of most businesses that exploit cheap labor in foreign countries, not to mention the cost of buying goods retail, I love shopping at Goodwill. At the same time, I always wondered, is something a little sketchy here? Everybody loves Goodwill. I'm not denying that. Your favorite collectible art piece or pair of pants you could never afford at retail prices are fond. Happy discoveries born within that treasure trove palace behind those beautiful blue doors. The glories of thrift store shopping aside, is Goodwill really a charity? How exactly would that work? That's also another interesting coincidence, because that's what Sarah came here to get, is a pair of pants. Alright, continuing. Legally, yes, it is a tax-exempt nonprofit that does perform work for the public good. But morally, it's got some pretty dark secrets. I'm not denying that Goodwill does some really wonderful stuff, but what if we didn't know the whole story? I mean, we never do. We never know the whole story about anything. Really, we have to make informed decisions based off of the little that we know, but we never do know the full story. By the way, I went in there and I can't help it. They have a book section in Goodwill, and I'm going to be reading a book by Johann Christoph Arnold called Escape Routes, for people who feel trapped in life's hells. It's not a very big book, 140 pages max here, 141 maybe, 141 pages. Goes up to 143 with text still in the book. So that's Escape. Really great condition. The next one I got is by Hans Kielsen, and it's called Comedy in a Minor Key, a novel. So nonfiction I don't normally read. And one of the things on the back that I read that really got me says, what Kielsen... Anyway, this is not what I'm reading. I'm reading about this Goodwill stuff. And then the last book I got was called Decision Points by George W. Bush. So 3 books to read. Alright. Let's get back to this dark... what is this article that I'm reading here, right? What's up with these? Let's put some binaural beats in the background here, shall we? What about 528 solfeggio frequency tones? Let's do that. That's why I changed the headphones in the first place. I couldn't hear it, and there was something going on that I couldn't figure out. Alright. So hopefully that won't be too loud. Let's turn this down a little bit. Binaural beats in the back. Alright. Alright. I am not denying that Goodwill does some really good stuff, but what if we didn't know the whole story? In the United States and Canada, the thrift store giant runs over 164 regional Goodwill organizations and 3,200 individual stores. Goodwill brands itself as a non-profit that provides jobs to disabled workers. But that's not quite the whole story. Suspicious business practices and lack of corporate oversight will make you question if Goodwill is actually such a good guy after all. Here are my 10 most outstanding contentions. Remember that this is by Alice Minium, and this is from Medium. Alright, here's her top 10 problems. Here are my top 10 most outstanding contentions. 1. Less than 1/8 of the company's profit goes towards its charity work. And there's an image here on the Goodwill window, and it says 84% of our revenue is reinvested in our community. Alright. Continuing, Goodwill sells free goods at a profit, but less than 1/8 of that profit actually goes to job-related programs they market as their primary pillar of charity work. In a 2016 piece for Nonprofit Quarterly, by the way, I'll mention that when I decided to start reading this as discussing it as a podcast, it was right at this point. I barely read in a 2016 piece for Nonprofit Quarterly. I stopped at the comma. Alright. Or I stopped at that, and then I decided to do this. Alright. In a 2016 piece for Nonprofit Quarterly, Ruth McCambridge examines a recent World Herald piece by Henry Cordes, which detailed some troubling information Cordes uncovered within Goodwill financial documents he obtained under the Freedom of Information Act. Alright, so this is the guy... Henry Cordes, where the image comes from that I'm using here as a podcast image, and also that's being used in the article that you'll see on Medium. Alright, Cordes writes,
While Goodwill Ohama runs job training and assistance programs that serve thousands annually, nearly all of those activities have been funded by government grants and contracts, not the $4 million in annual profits generated by Goodwill's thrift stores in eastern Nebraska and western Iowa. Even its signature... Oh, it says, I said Ohama. Goodwill Omaha. While Goodwill Omaha runs job training and assistant programs that serve thousands annually. Nearly all of those activities have been funded by government grants and contracts, not the $4 million in annual profits generated by Goodwill's thrift stores in eastern Nebraska and western Iowa. Even its signature program that employs disabled job trainees within its stores is primarily funded by school districts. Interesting. Goodwill officials identified only 555. Oh gosh. Goodwill officials identified only $557,000 in jobs program spending in 2015 that was funded by retail sales. Most store profits are being consumed by administrative overhead, which includes much of the pay to its top leaders. It's a hard sell to argue that your primary goal is job training when only $557,000 out of $4 million in profit is spent on that goal, and even harder when your top CEOs cash in $1 million salaries. $57.3 million in executive bonuses total, born from the profit of a disabled workforce exploited for cents on the dollar. 2. Your donated items get shipped out to neo-imperialist buyers that threaten developing industry in third world countries. Huh? Your donated items get shipped out to neo-imperialist buyers that threaten developing industry in third world countries. And there's another image here. Looks like a big donation pile. I don't know what's going on over there. Alright, continuing from Alice Minium's article here. If Goodwill can't sell your clothes, it ships them to sell to third world countries overseas, a practice that is widely documented as harming industry in developing nations by importing cheaply priced goods, or if that doesn't happen, they go to a landfill. Okay, that's what that image is. Is that a landfill? I don't know. Alright, 3. Wait a minute, why would they fucking put the man in a landfill? That's not good. Alright. 3. Goodwill has actively fought against legislative proposals to raise the minimum wage. And there's another image, a woman buying something from Goodwill, the back of an employee is facing us, blue Goodwill shirt. Caption reads, that's not a caption. Anyway, continuing. Despite bringing in over $3.8 billion in revenue, the nonprofit argues that it can't afford to pay its employees. 4. Goodwill seized on an archaic 1938 law to justify paying workers as little as 22 cents an hour. Under Section 14C of the Fair Labor Standards Act, an outdated law that Autistic Self-Advocacy Network President Ari Ne'eman calls a vestige of the past, over 7,300 workers in 14 states are paid less than 23 cents an hour. What the fuck? What the fuck is my own? Continuing, according to Pennsylvania records from 2009, some Goodwill workers earned as little as 22, 38, and 41 cents an hour. An NBC News critical investigation first broke the story in 2013. Another image has a Goodwill sign with that white happy face on a blue background saying Goodwill. Oh, nah, the Goodwill is the happy face. Okay, that's a G. Alright, I didn't get that before. Alright, and this one does have a caption, I think. It says, Cheat Sheets Chloe Della Costa writes, Goodwill Industries, a tax-exempt nonprofit that generates more than $5 billion in annual revenue and pays its executives six-figure and seven-figure salaries, pays some of its workers as little as 22 cents per hour. Why? Because they are disabled. Hey, you. How was the rest of your little shopping escapade? Did you get what you... No? Okay. So we go somewhere else for that then, yeah?
It's okay.
What's in the bag? Did you find a book or something?
This.
What
It was
is...
very cheap.
I'm sure it was. So is it a little jacket? Nice. Well, happy day.
Happy day.
Alright. I'm reading from this article that I wrote because of what you brought up about Goodwill. So I'm doing a little podcast about the about something that I found, like one of the first things I found. So I didn't really put in a lot of legwork. Anyway, off to wherever you wish. If you want to go get some other stuff, you can do that.
Food and vape at some point.
What's that?
Food and vape.
Yes. Okay. Let's do that. All right. Continuing here, podcast listeners. Cheat Sheet Chloe Della Costa writes, Goodwill Industries, a tax-exempt nonprofit that generates more than $5 billion in annual revenue and pays its executives six-figure and seven-figure salaries, pays some of its workers as little as 22 cents per hour. Why? Because they are disabled. One worker's pay stub revealed that she was paid $3.27 for 24 hours of work. All right. I can't just gloss past this one. Hold on a minute. Reef. Yeah, that is pretty bad. Number 5. Many people with disabilities have actually died from injuries born of Goodwill's unsafe workplace safety practices. What the hell? Many people with disabilities have actually died from injuries born of Goodwill's unsafe workplace safety practices. Wow. And we have an image of a guy, I don't know what he's doing, looks like he's fixing something here. Anyway, the source is Goodwill Industries, the photo. As disabled employees are not protected by the same laws as their able-bodied co-workers, Goodwill relegates certain dangerous tasks to disabled workers. Several employees have died performing these tasks. Despite failing to provide up-to-date equipment, safety training, and any kind of company oversight policy, the nonprofit maintains that it is not responsible for employees killed performing these on-the-job tasks, blaming employee negligence instead. Alex Moyle writes, at the end of September last year, 26-year-old Abraham Garza was killed when his head was crushed as he checked the alignment between a heavy steel bin and a trash compactor at the Goodwill store on Franklin Boulevard in South Sacramento, California. Wow. P.S. All the other times this has happened. What? It looks like there's a link. Wow, from socialistworker.org. Why Goodwill goes bad. Okay, there's that. Let me go back to the other article here. Alright. Quote, it's a question of civil rights. I feel like a second-class citizen, and I hate it. Sheila Leegland, $2.75 an hour. Number 6. Employees that criticize Goodwill's practices end up getting fired, threatened, and publicly defamed by the company. Dedicated Goodwill employee David Goody, who had pushed for workplace safety reform prior to a fatal accident at a Sacramento Goodwill in 2016, captured the careful attention of company's executive board by giving public testimony describing his disabled co-worker's fatal accident, including delivering an account of his superior's gross negligence in workplace safety regulations. When this concerned employee repeatedly filed reports to his supervisors addressing these dangerous conditions and a need for improvement in company policy, he was fired and publicly slandered in a company press release. Quote, Goodwill management didn't take responsibility for the tragedy. Instead, they fired David Goody, banning him from the premises when he reported to work 10 days after the incident. Even now, months after Goody went public, Goodwill is standing by its story. Goodwill definitely grieves over the tragedy of this accident, said spokeswoman Karen McLaughlin. But this was caused by the negligence of one employee. Goody paused. A little boy will be growing up without his father, for no good reason. I can think of no rational explanation for Goodwill's lack of concern other than executive incompetence or greed, or both. 7. Employees are subject to strict, unrealistic performance quotas, and their wages are docked if they're not fast enough. What the fuck? They're already getting paid cents on the hour, and now their fucking wages are docked if they're not fast enough? Alright. There's another image, and it's a rack of clothes and a lady blurry in the background. Alright, here we go. If warriors don't hang 100 items of clothing in 32 minutes, their pay gets docked. Pay that is already far below the minimum wage. Yes, I just said that. This punishes people with disabilities and creates an easy means of leverage for the company to continue reducing these workers' pay. In her 2015 piece for Cheat Sheet, Chloe Della Costa writes, Goodwill wants to see workers hang 100 garments in 32 minutes, and depending on how badly employees miss the mark, hourly wages are cut. Oh, you know what? We'll keep going straight. Howdy? Cool? Alright, Goodwill wants to see workers hang 100 garments in 32 minutes, and depending on how badly employees miss the mark, hourly wages are cut. Leegland says she and her husband, who is also blind and worked at Goodwill, should not have been hanging clothes to begin with because they can't see the sizes. She explained to NBC that she is college educated and would have been more successful at a different job, such as answering phones. At $2.75, it would barely cover my cost of getting to work. I wouldn't make any money. Sheila Leegland. 8. Hiring disabled and formerly incarcerated people is not a venerable act of charity. It's corporate responsibility. And we have an employee smiling at the camera and a sepia background, and a sepia colored photo, and the source is Goodwill. Workers who suffer from systematic discrimination deserve safe workplace environments and realistic wages. Pithy rhetoric that justifies poor treatment by saying, it's the best they can do and at least we gave them jobs, is not a progressive, socially responsible move. It echoes the very same attitudes against Americans with disabilities that Goodwill claims it is working to fight. People with disabilities are not a burden, and it is a company's job to accommodate all employees' needs, fairly compensate them for their labor, and give them the same opportunities and work conditions as an able-bodied co-worker. There's an image, looks like a letter here. Let me see if I can expand this. Take a look at it. No, that's not working. Alright, whatever. From Goodwill's Employment of People with Disabilities through FLSA Section 14C Fair Wages Position Document. It says, work is a valued activity. You are welcome. Here's 22 cents. Alright, if you don't want to do this and you'd rather compensate employees as expendably equivalent to their potential for generating capital without fair access to a livable bottom line, then do that. But don't call yourself a charity while doing it. Dude, Goodwill, you don't even pay taxes. It's not like you can't afford it. Where are we at right now? What is this street? Oh yeah, we'll go up one more. And then we're gonna make a right.
Everybody's probably like, he's got a knife. He's got a knife.
Wow.
And she's lighter's on fire. It's fucking crazy. Are you really gonna do that? You're the one that fucking getting up my ass.
Alright, there's traffic snafus. Do you have road rage? Are you a road rager?
No, I'm just like, don't get mad at me for something you did.
I'm just curious. I haven't seen you road rage. Alright. Goodwill continues. Let's see. Equality means each individual or group of people is given the same resources or opportunities. Equity recognizes that each person has different circumstances and allocates the exact resources and opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome. Milken Institute School of Public Health. People are profiting from exploiting disabled workers. It's clearly and unquestionably exploitation. Ari Ne'eman. 9. Goodwill's legal status as a charity wins grants and tax subsidies, manifesting in hugely lucrative quantities of profit for executives that are not evenly distributed amongst the people they are intended to benefit. Alright, another image of a bunch of people in a room, a bunch of clothes everywhere. Looks like donation baskets. I'm not sure what it is. Alright, Goodwill's practices are not that far out of the league of ethically questionable business behavior that has come to determine what we expect of businesses. The difference that Goodwill brand itself as a charity. As Henry J. Cordes aptly remarks, executive pay at Goodwill Omaha. Jeez, I said it again. Omaha. I wonder why that is. I'm going to look into what that dyslexic. There you go. Why I don't look at Omaha right away as Omaha and look at it as Ohama. That's interesting. Executive pay at Goodwill Omaha stands in sharp contrast to the compensation of its rank-and-file workers, made up largely of relatively low-paid store managers and social workers and store clerks paid little more than minimum wage. Federal records show the nonprofit also recently has paid less than the minimum wage to 110 workers with significant disabilities, legal under a controversial federal law that allows such sub-minimum wages for the disabled. A Forbes investigation quoted disabled former Goodwill workers recounting how, under the wage certificate program, they were made to compete in a gross race against the clock, and had their wages cut for every garment below quota that they didn't sort, button, and hang on a rack in the time allowed. At the same time, Goodwill was paying its top executive $53.7 million in compensation, and Doug Barr, the CEO of Goodwill Southern California, was himself taking home $1,188,733 in total compensation. Okay, we'll make it right here. The fact is that while Goodwill does many wonderful things, most of the funding for its socially beneficial program comes from government grants and subsidies. So how much good really is the organization doing for the public? And 10. Perhaps most of all, it is troubling to promote your business as a charitable institution, project a false image of your workplace practices, and abuse the public's trust. And one more final image of outside of a Goodwill. I see the words painted on that says retail center. Alright, this discredits the truly valuable, truly charitable work many smaller, independent thrift stores work for tirelessly, and it deceptively routes consumer spending and positive intentions away from the organizations actually performing charitable or honest work in their communities. In fact, I have noticed in my own hometown that Goodwill somehow seem to pop up literally right next to smaller, independently owned thrift stores, doubtlessly in an outright attempt to redirect potential customers away from these established thrift stores and through Goodwill's own doors. Yes. It is a glorious cloud cover with the sunlight peeking through. We're eventually going to make a left, so not at this light, at the next, I suppose, if we can. Alright, finalizing out this article here on Medium. It's not that Goodwill is markedly different from other dominant businesses, And it's not that Goodwill hasn't done good. It absolutely has. It's that Goodwill has not been honest, and it has somehow managed to convince the American public of its status as a reputable charity, all the while consciously campaigning to project that image while obscuring its crimes against the very people it claims it is working to help. This raises larger questions about American expectations of corporate ethics, the laws that prop up unjust systems, and abuse of the most vulnerable populations among us. Corporate abuse of employees has become a feature of modern capitalism, but doing so under the guise of charity, there's something that's especially concerning about that. And we have a list of more things Alice wrote. Remember, this is by Alice, how do I say her name? Minium. And let's see, what else has Alice wrote here? We have The Morality of Something Misrepresentation, A Day in the Life of Your Uber, and these things are trailing off with 3 dots, so that's why I'm not. College Doesn't Make You A Brief History of Hysteria, Fire and Fury, A Damning Portrait of, I guess it's saying, Dumpster Diving and Dystopia. Alright, well, this is called A Dark Reality Behind America's Greatest Thrift Store Empire. I did a quick search about Goodwill because my creative director, Miss Sarah here, as we went into Goodwill, passed on some information that her mom had shared with her. She briefly told me her opinions about Goodwill. And before I ran my mouth defending Goodwill, I decided to look it up, see what I find, and this is a good article by Alice Minium, while Sarah's over here modifying her shorts that she got. And a good looking top, by the way. It's a good color. Brings out the fire in your red hair. So yeah, this is the dark reality behind America's greatest thrift store empire. How a Saturday night internet wormhole effectively ruined my favorite store. By Alice Minium. It was published on April 22nd, 2018. And I am Hakeem-Ali-Bocas-Alexander, and everything I do is World Reading Club related, just like this. I was reading. I love to read. So, and check it out for yourself. The link directly to this article is in the show notes here. Alright, y'all. Peace to the out. Don't scream and shout. Later. Oh, and this audio in the background is it's a 528 solfeggio tone binaural beat frequency formula from my Solfeggio on the Seas collection. So I'll play that out for a little bit more later, y'all. Stay well.